US-Präsident Joe Biden hat kürzlich geäußert, die USA seien bereit, mit Russland, China und Nordkorea über Fragen der nuklearen Sicherheit in den Dialog zu treten, ohne Vorbedingungen, um die nukleare Bedrohung zu verringern. Biden argumentierte, es ist weder für unsere Nationen noch für die Welt von Vorteil, Fortschritte beim Abbau der Atomwaffenarsenale zu verhindern. Handelt es sich dabei nur um eine Finte im US-Wahlkampf? Schließlich waren es ja die USA, die den ABM-Vertrag aufgekündigt haben und den INF-Vertrag nicht weiter verlängert haben. Oder wollen die USA plötzlich tatsächlich wieder über den Abbau der Atomwaffenarsenale verhandeln?
Very difficult to talk about what the U.S. wants and the sincerity of the U.S. We have shown ourselves to be liars, manipulators, deceivers. We cannot be trusted. We entered the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty only to withdraw from it in 2001, 2002. The Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty, we withdrew from that in 2019. We currently have shown no interest in extending the New START Treaty. We have people testifying before the United States Congress, literally salivating at the mouth, waiting for the New START Treaty to expire so that they can deploy new nuclear weapons in unlimited numbers. We don't believe in arms control. If we did believe in arms control, then we would have an arms control and disarmament agency, the same agency that John F. Kennedy created back in 1961 that guided us through the Cold War and prevented a nuclear war from happening by promoting arms control. We disbanded it because we no longer viewed arms control as something that was useful to us, because arms control is only useful to the United States so long as we can abuse it to achieve nuclear advantage. We were a nuclear superior, indeed some could say supreme power in 1999. That's why we got rid of the Arms Control and Disarmament Agency. And as a result, we left the ABM Treaty. We left the INF Treaty. We're going to let New START Treaty die. And now for the President of the United States to come in and say this, in the end, it's a reflection of the following facts. One, remember, he refused to pick up the baton that Donald Trump was handing off to him regarding denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula. Kim Jong-un, the North Korean leader, was ready to continue the negotiations with Joe Biden. It was Joe Biden that said no. And the consequences of his refusing to continue that is that North Korea now has solidified itself as a nuclear power with a viable nuclear deterrence posture against the United States that they're not going to negotiate away. It is Joe Biden who signed off on a new nuclear employment plan that factored in China and started targeting China preemptively with American nuclear weapons, compelling China to expand the size of their nuclear deterrent, putting in over 300 missile silos in Western China, manning them with 100 missiles that move from silo to silo, making American targeting very difficult. China has called, has responded to the American. Now Biden realizes it's going to cost him $1 trillion to respond to that, and America can't afford that. And it's Biden that turned his back on Russia, refusing to negotiate in good faith when Russia was ready to negotiate in good faith, because he had bought into a policy that was using Ukraine as a proxy to bring down Russia, to destroy Russia, to defeat Russia strategically. And now he says, while we're still seeking to destroy Russia strategically, we want you to get rid of or limit the one thing that makes it impossible to defeat you strategically, your strategic nuclear forces. Joe Biden is a joke. He's an embarrassment. But so too is the State Department. So too is the Department of Defense. So too is the United States. We cannot be trusted. And as a result, nobody will negotiate with us at all because we cannot negotiate in good faith. That is the truth. We need to get rid of Joe Biden. We need to get rid of the current establishment of people. What passed for the arms control community in the United States has long ago died. There are nobody like Paul Warnke. There are nobody like Paul Nietzsche. There are nobody like the people who negotiated the START Treaty, the SALT Treaty, the INF Treaty. They don't exist anymore. All we have are liars. The last negotiator we had, Rose Goodmuller, was the one who sat down with the former Russian ambassador to the United States, Anatoly Antonov, when they were negotiating the 2010 New START Treaty. And Antonov said, we must factor in ballistic missile defense. And Rose Goldmiller looked him in the eyes and said, don't worry about it. We promise you, if you sign this, we'll get this through the Senate, and then we'll talk missile defense. But we can't combine the two. But we promise you that we will work towards missile defense. And the Russians were silly enough to believe her. And they negotiated the treaty. They signed the treaty. And then later, a few months later, when Antonov picked up the phone and said, I'm ready to talk ballistic missiles defense. Gutemiller said, no, we're not doing that. Isn't going to happen. America lies. We can't be trusted. So it's irrelevant what Joe Biden's saying. He's speaking into a vacuum because nobody's listening to him, because he cannot be trusted. He himself, the man who campaigned saying, I want to be a president who has a policy that says America's nuclear forces will only be used. The sole purpose of American nuclear forces is to be used to deter against nuclear strike. But then he turned around and continued the Trump administration policy of preemptive nuclear posture, using nuclear weapons preemptively in a non-nuclear environment. That means that we can attack anybody anytime we want with nuclear weapons for whatever reason we want. That's Joe Biden. And now he wants to say, oh, I want to negotiate. First of all, he's at the end of his term. Nobody's going to negotiate with an administration at the end of their term. At a minimum, they're going to wait to see who comes in next. And then there has to be a song and dance. This is the danger. This is why Biden missed his opportunity to extend New START. As a result, we're whoever gets in, whether it be Harris or Trump, they're going to have to decide if they want arms control, but then they have less than a year to get a treaty in place to replace the New START treaty that's expiring on February 26, 2026. So this is a very, very dangerous situation. But Joe Biden, he's irrelevant. His words mean nothing. America cannot be trusted. Nobody, North Korea, China, Russia, nobody trusts the United States anymore because of Joe Biden.
Wir haben in den letzten Wochen mehrfach über die Gefahr eines möglichen Atomkrieges gesprochen. Könntest du bitte ins Detail gehen und darstellen, nach welchem Schema ein solcher Atomkrieg ablaufen würde? Welche Orte und Städte würden zu Zielen werden für die USA und Russland? Würden auch Ziele jenseits der NATO und Russlands anvisiert werden?
Look, there's many scenarios, but let's talk about three that could manifest themselves as we speak. And I just want to remind your viewers that if any of these scenarios kicks off within 72 minutes, we'll all be dead. So chew on that. I wish all your viewers would wake up every morning scared to death, puking, couldn't eat, scared, can't go outside, afraid to look up in the sky because of an imminent nuclear war. And then at some point in time, they might realize that they have to do something, like contact their politicians and say, stop this madness. One of the biggest mad acts right now is what's taking place between NATO and Russia, where Selenskij, the president of Ukraine, is trying to convince NATO to allow him to use long-range missiles provided by NATO to strike targets inside Russia. Russia has said that if you do this, those who provide the missiles will be considered parties to the conflict and will be attacked. Russia attacking a NATO member triggers Article 5. Article 5 will result in an automatic nuclear war. Every single one of your pathetic little European cities will be destroyed. You want to know how they're going to be destroyed? In a blinding flash of light. 190 million degrees, evaporating everything within 1 mile radius. Everything gone, dust, finished. And then there will be 9 miles of fireball spanning out, burning everything, melting everything, all your buildings down. And beyond that, extending for even more distance, will be more fires, radioactive death and destruction. And then all the material goes into the air and covers the clouds, and nuclear winter comes in, because this isn't just going to be one nuclear bomb going off. It's going to be thousands going off. Europe will cease to exist, There will be no life in Europe. Hey, is that what you want, Europe? You got it. Continue to say it's a good thing. Let's let Ukraine fire missiles into Russia and you will pay the price. But that's just one thing. And by the way, it's happening now as we speak. The Ukrainians are running around begging Europe to commit suicide on their behalf. Say, please kill yourselves for us. Please kill yourselves for us, because that's what he's saying. And you're stupid enough to let him speak. I've been to Europe. I've seen your cities. I love your cities. I have a good memory as long as it continues to function. And that's what I'll rely upon as you turn into radioactive dust. But you are going to bring us down with you. And this is why I despise you. I really do. I'm coming to the point where I hate Europeans, because you're trying to kill me and my family because of your stupidity. Do you really think that allowing Ukraine to fire missiles into Russia is going to change everything? You think that's going to tip the balance of power? It will not. And Russia will destroy you, and they're on record saying to destroy you. And now you're running your pathetic little NATO nuclear exercise. How stupid can you be? Well, I've already answered that question, but now we can move on to the next scenario. Korea. Again, we had an opportunity under Donald Trump to denuclearize Korea, to get the North Koreans committed to getting rid of their nuclear weapons, to try and incorporate North Korea into the family of nations. But no, the neoconservatives working with Donald Trump decided to sabotage that effort, and Joe Biden refused to pick up the baton. And now we have North Korea as a nuclear-armed state, and we continue to put pressure on North Korea. We continue to squeeze North Korea militarily. The United States has created a de facto alliance with South Korea and Japan that threatens North Korea. What has North Korea done? They've said, we're finished. We don't want to have anything to do with the South. At one point in time, there was talk about unification. North Korea says there will be no unification. Whether they've gone in, they've blown up all the bridges, all the roads, all the train connecting. They're literally saying, we're done with the South. What did the South do? Fire on the North Koreans. So now the North Koreans are considering how to respond. North Korea responds, South retaliates. North Korea comes in with overwhelming artillery force. The United States, South Korea, and Japan seek to implement their strategic partnership, threatening North Korea, and North Korea nukes South Korea, Japan, maybe fires a couple nukes off against the United States. This now triggers an American reaction. We will immediately cycle about 50 to 100 ICBMs out of our silos towards North Korea. They will overfly Russia. Russia will not be certain whether or not those missiles are flying Russia or targeting Russian sites or North Korean sites. Russia has a launch on warning posture. Russia will fire its nuclear weapons into the United States and NATO, killing all life on those places. We're all dead. That's the second one. Let's go to Iran. We've sitting here allowed Israel to, posture itself. Israel attacks Iran. Iran responds by destroying Israel. Israel responds by firing nuclear weapons at Iran's nuclear facilities. Iran responds by deploying the 3 to 5 nuclear weapons that it's prepared to build, eliminating Israel. The United States responds by attacking Iran. Russia responds by defending Iran and attacking the United States. The world ends. There it is. Those are 3 simple scenarios. I could throw in Taiwan. How we decide that we're going to promote the independence of Taiwan. We provoke a fight. China invades. We respond. Chinese sink our aircraft carriers. We respond with a limited nuclear strike against China. China responds by nuking the United States. We see the missiles coming in. We do launch on warning. We fire our missiles. They fire their missiles. Russia fires their missiles, and the whole world ends. Here's the way the whole world ends. There's no way we come out of any nuclear conflict, feeling good. So there we are. There we are. We're all going to die. And it's all thanks to the stupidity of the Europeans. Literally, you're to blame for everything because all you had to do is stand up to the United States and say no. All you Germans out there, you do know we're deploying missiles on your soil. Schultz allowed it, and they're going to come in 2026 if we're still alive. And those missiles are going to be inherently destabilizing. Maybe all the Germans who demonstrated against the deployment of INF forces back in the early 1980s, maybe they're all dead. Maybe they're all senile in old folks' homes. That's okay. The new generation, go watch the videos. See what happens when Germany had a conscience. See what happens when the Germans could take to the streets and say no to nukes. They brought down the government, 1983, and they created the political momentum that led to the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty and the elimination of those missiles. Germany could lead again. That could be a positive thing for Germany. Instead, you're inviting the missiles back in, and the streets of Germany are empty. Because you're stupid, because you've forgotten your history, because you want to commit suicide. Well, that's your business, but don't bring me down with you.
Wie sehe die Erde nach einem Atomkrieg aus? Mit welchem Grad der Zerstörung müssen wir rechnen? Würde es zu einem nuklearen Winter kommen? Wäre die Erde noch bewohnbar für Menschen?
I think most scientists believe that if there's a large-scale nuclear conflict that uses weapons that are roughly a half megaton or megaton in size, thousands of these weapons, that there will be a nuclear winter, that the nuclear winter could last for up to 6 to 10 years, covering the world, much of the world in a sheet of ice that'll make human life unlivable, unsupportable. The damage done to crops will be devastating. Those who don't die from the immediate impact of the nuclear explosions and don't die a lingering and horrible death of radiation poisoning will die of disease and starvation. There's no place on the earth that you can hide where you will be able to survive. Life will become unsustainable, and the planet will be governed by cockroaches, which might be a good thing.
Du sprachst vorhin über die Nukleardoktrin der USA und Russlands, die im Falle einer angenommenen existenziellen Bedrohung in Kraft treten. Bis zu welchem Punkt lässt sich ein Atomkrieg noch verhindern? Reicht dafür ein Telefonanruf zwischen Moskau und Washington?
Phone call would be enough if the parties on each side respected one another. Russia's been betrayed by the West one too many times. And the thing is, even if a president is elected who can make that phone call and get that phone call answered, Russia has to be concerned about what happens in 4 years when a new American president is elected. See, the problem isn't necessarily the American president, it's the Russophobia that's infected the United States, where we have a tendency to view Russia as a threat. We will always view Russia as a threat. Therefore, Russia has no incentive to negotiate with the United States, because as long as we view Russia as a threat, that means we can't conceive of a moment when Russia is our friend, and you don't negotiate treaties to get rid of your strategic nuclear deterrence with people that you can't imagine being your friends. So the United States has to fundamentally reshape its its thought process when it comes to Russia, and this is a problem because in addition to the ongoing risk of nuclear war, the United States has declared war on free speech. People who did speak out trying to educate people about the reality of Russia are being attacked, criminalized, have their homes raided by the FBI. Others are being prosecuted. And this means that if this is allowed to go unchecked, that the Russophobia will continue to be manifest inside the United States. And that's the problem. We need a radical transformation of the way American people think about Russia, about China, about North Korea, about the world, which requires them to reevaluate their own role in the world. We need to stop speaking of ourselves as the exceptional nation or the indispensable nation. We are a dispensable nation, like any nation is a dispensable nation. And, if we want to call ourselves exceptional, it's only that all humanity is exceptional. But the moment we think that we're better than somebody else, we've just identified the problem. The problem is us. So until we're willing to view the Russians as equals, the Chinese as equals, the North Koreans as equals, the world as equals, there's no reason for anybody to negotiate in good faith with America.
Kurz vor dem BRICS-Gipfeltreffen Ende kommender Woche in Kasan scheint sich die Spannung in einer Vielzahl von Konfliktzonen wieder zu verschärfen. So auch die Lage auf der koreanischen Halbinsel. Du hast es bereits angesprochen. Nordkorea zerstört die Straßen in den Süden. Südkorea feuert zurück. Kim Yo-jong, die Schwester des nordkoreanischen Staatschefs Kim Jong-un, warnt, dass jegliche Provokation aus dem Süden zu einer schrecklichen Katastrophe führen würde. Droht tatsächlich ein neuer militärischer Schlagabtausch auf der koreanischen Halbinsel? Und warum wird die Stimmung gerade jetzt so angeheizt?
Well, there is a real threat. I think there's a growing recognition on the part of Japan and South Korea that the United States is not able to protect them from the consequences of a war with North Korea. And we see a rise of militarism in Japan, where Article 9, which prohibits a military, even though Japan is one of the most militarized nations in the world today, Japan is seeking to basically eradicate Article 9 and return to the status it once enjoyed back in the 1930s. Major sea power, major land power. That did lead to World War II and Japan, the brutal occupation of the Korean Peninsula, brutal occupation of China. And American intervention led to destruction of Japan. This is history repeating itself. South Korea is likewise, very nervous about the nuclear North. South Korea always envisioned that its growing economic or its developed economic potential would be that which overwhelmed the North, that the North would be attracted to the South, to the lure of capitalism, and that would lead to the end of North Korea. We now see that's not the case. North Korea has broken free of the constraints of sanctions. It has, vibrant economic relations with Russia, with China, and as BRICS develops, it will have vibrant economic relations directly and indirectly with most of the developing world. North Korea will become a modern nation state, able to stand on its own 2 feet, and this is the end of the Southern dream of reenacting what West Germany did to East Germany during German unification, where the West dominated the East and took control. The South envisions they would be able to do that with the North. That's no longer going to happen. Now the South is basically, rudderless. They don't know where they're going now. They don't know what their reason for being is. And this could lead to, again, desperation on the part of Southern leaders that think that they could now's the time to act against North before the North is able to solidify its new independent posture. Now's the time to provoke some sort of conflict that could lead to a crisis in the North that could collapse the Kim Jong-un regime. And again, this could lead to, a massive escalation. What happens when North Korea decides to open up all of its artillery pieces on Seoul, Korea? Tens of thousands of rockets and artillery shells will come pouring down on Seoul. There's nothing Seoul can do to defend itself. The city will be literally annihilated. What does the United States do in that case? Do we respond with nuclear weapons, knowing that the North Korean retaliation will be to destroy South Korea and Japan, and perhaps fire missiles at the United States that we cannot shoot down? It's a very, very dangerous situation right now.
Wenn es zu einem Krieg zwischen Nordkorea und Südkorea käme, wie würde er ablaufen? Welche Kräfte würden Nordkorea ins Feld führen? Könnte Südkorea zusammen mit den USA einem nordkoreanischen Angriff standhalten? Und würde dieser Krieg automatisch zum Einsatz von Atomwaffen führen?
The United States and South Korea could not withstand a concerted North Korean attack, at least in the initial moments. The plan would have to include the withdrawal from Seoul, retreating south down the peninsula, perhaps reenacting the Pusan perimeter. The problem is that we now have nuclear forces that the temptation would be to use low-yield nuclear weapons as a way of slowing down the North Korean advance, of doing damage to North Korea. And once we use low-yield nuclear weapons, North Korea will respond with their nuclear weapons, and now we're into the scenario that would rapidly escalate into general nuclear war between Russia, China, the United States. There's no reason for us to talk about conventional military forces, because whatever happens, if there's a conventional war, it will rapidly turn nuclear. There's no doubt about that. And then once it turns nuclear, it's all over. So we shouldn't get wrapped around the details of what a conventional fight would look like, the balance of power, etc. All we need to know is that if North Korea and South Korea go to war, that eventually nuclear weapons will be used, and the use of nuclear weapons will not be limited to the Korean Peninsula and will involve the United States, Russia, and China.
Siehst du einen Zusammenhang mit der gegenwärtigen geopolitischen Eskalation, wie etwa auf der koreanischen Halbinsel, und dem BRICS-Gipfeltreffen kommende Woche? Versucht der Westen, den BRICS-Gipfel zu stören oder durch aktuelle Konflikte thematisch zu überlagern?
I mean, there's no doubt that the West doesn't want the BRICS summit to succeed, but it would be extraordinarily foolhardy to try and ramp up. And I'll tell you one of the reasons why I don't buy into the notion that the West is deliberately creating warlike crises. This is an election season. A war will be the end of Kamala Harris's campaign. Donald Trump is campaigning on a promise to keep America out of wars. And if the last thing the Biden administration does is get us into a major conflict, if we survive this conflict, that's the end of Kamala Harris's presidency. I think the Biden administration is going to do everything possible to prevent a conflict from taking place. Other parties may be seeking to take advantage of Russia's perceived desire to avoid anything that disrupts BRICS. So, basically saying now's the time to strike because Russia's response will be restrained, that Russia won't risk the sabotage of BRICS by having a harsh reaction. So there might be some players out there, the Ukrainians, etc., who are saying this is the time to provoke the Russians because they don't want to deliberately sabotage the BRICS summit. But for the most part, all of these crises have developed on what I would call their own volition, their own momentum, that there's not any artificiality thrown into this. These are a byproduct of policy decisions that have been made over the course of time, not some new policy being implemented to try and undermine BRICS.
Warum würdest du sagen, dass es derzeit so viele Konfliktzonen gibt, die eskalieren? Siehst du einen allgemeinen Zusammenhang zwischen diesen geopolitischen Krisenherden? Erleben wir eine Art geopolitischen Dammbruch?
Well, we're watching the collapse of an empire right before our eyes, the American empire. It's been predicted for some time now, and it's been collapsing for some time now, and we're seeing it play out. You know, one of the reasons why BRICS, the meeting in Kazan, is so important is that it's operating on an accelerated timetable, a timetable that is, dictated by America's actions after the Russian, initiation of the special military operation, the sanctioning of the world, the posturing, the militaristic posturing that was generated after that has created the conditions for BRICS to rapidly expand as they did last year, and they will hopefully continue this year, and to in a very short order. You know, people were saying that if anybody was ever to come up with a competition to the supremacy of the dollar, that it would take a decade or more to do this. Now Russia has just finished a meeting of finance ministers where they have agreed that this is going to happen, and you're going to see something happen at the BRICS Summit. We are watching an empire in collapse, and when an empire collapses, you get these kind of conflicts. The one thing everything has in common is the degradation of the United States as a global power. We are no longer the hegemon that we believe ourselves to be, and the more we try to assert hegemonic type dominance, the more pushback there will be, and some of this pushback will manifest itself violently in terms of conflicts.
Würdest du sagen, dass der kommende BRICS-Gipfel ein endgültiger Schlag für die Vorherrschaft der USA in der Welt sein wird? Fällt das Imperium tatsächlich? Oder wird sich dieser Fall noch lange Zeit hinziehen?
I don't know. When you study the collapse of empires, very rarely does the empire, especially one that's as well established as the United States, collapse overnight. One only has to study the fall of the Roman Empire to see, how the collapse went through downward cycles where the resurgence and collapse, resurgence, collapse, resurgence, collapse. I also believe that the United States eventually will self-adjust to the new realities to avoid total collapse. That at some point in time we will recognize the new reality of multipolarity, and we will seek to adjust in a manner that retains as much power and influence as we can, while acknowledging that there is a new player in town, that uncontested American hegemony is a thing of the past. I do believe that we can adjust to this, but the question is, how far down the ladder of collapse do we go before we make this adjustment?
Liebe Zuschauer, wenn euch unsere Beiträge gefallen, teilt sie unbedingt in den sozialen Medien. Abonniert unseren Kanal und drückt auf die Glocke, damit ihr keine Veröffentlichung von Gegenpol verpasst.